Good morning. It is an enormous pleasure and privilege to be here in Gwangju today with my colleagues from the UK, Jason Hawkins-Rowe from Aponic International and James Millichap-Merrick from Vitabeam UK. We're here to explore additional partnerships and collaborations with our friends here in South Korea. And what I'd like to do this morning is to introduce you to the innovation ecosystem that we have built in the UK based around Cambridge and the wider east of England, which is now acting as a magnet to attract other innovators, researchers, farmers and growers to be part of this effort to advance agriculture and horticulture. Before I do that, I would like to acknowledge very gratefully the hosts and organizers of today's conference and yesterday's exhibition. It was a great honor to be part of the opening ceremony. And I would also like to thank President Park for his very warm welcome. And also Professor Lee, we very much value your friendship, your vision, your collaboration. We've known each other many years and we hope for many years to come. So I would like to start by just reminding ourselves about Agri-Tech. So I'm very often asked how I define Agri-Tech. And I think for me, we heard this morning already about the first agricultural revolution. And I think innovation in agriculture has really been built on three main pillars. And those pictures at the top, for me, really symbolize what innovation in agriculture has been about ever since humans started working the land and managing animals. So those three pillars of innovation are, the first one is chemicals, ag chemicals to help improve productivity, to help reduce pests and diseases, to enhance nutrition. Machinery, and we'll be hearing more about that from the second keynote. And also breeding of plants and animals to improve productivity and efficiency. So those three pillars have been the ones on which agricultural innovation has really been invested all these years. But what an exciting time we are now seeing. And as the subject of today's conference, looking at those core technologies from all different sectors that are now starting to enter into agriculture, that perhaps have been validated and are being used in other sectors, that now are looking to agriculture to see how they can help. And part of what my organization does is to provide a warm welcome and a soft landing for technologies that perhaps have been being used in automotive, aerospace, maritime, telecoms and communications, and help them understand the route to market and appreciate what the market opportunities in agriculture could be, what the business model and the necessary collaborations could be in order to gain traction in this important market. So this slide, I feel slightly embarrassed because we wrote this slide, I think in maybe 2016, 17. And this was our vision for what the farm of the future would look like. We really stretched our vision as to how futuristic it could look, the kinds of technologies that we might hope and expect to see on farms of the future. And we thought we were being very forward-thinking, very innovative. We thought this may be 10 to 15 years hence before this image became reality on farms. And we're already there. There is probably not one farm, certainly in UK, Europe, US, North and potentially South America, and indeed in large parts of Asia, where these technologies are not being used already. And as we've been hearing, the vision for the AI Center, the Innovation Valley that the university is spearheading with the province, we very much welcome and excited about the Jeollanam-do ambition to create a global hub or an Asian hub for AI and agri-tech. And this is now what we're seeing on farms. And crucially to this is the engagement of the farmers. And part of what I'd like to talk to you about today is how we have been trying to create a market pull as well as a technology push for the kinds of innovations that you see on the slide before you. So I want to just take a bit of a deeper dive into the kinds of technologies that are changing Industry 4.0. We heard from Director Pak this morning about the importance of things like semiconductors and electronics. And if I just run the animation, you can see the kinds of technology. Some are already being used routinely on farm, some are a little bit further away. But just to kind of run through some of them, I've already mentioned genetics, for example. You will hopefully be aware that there is now a big move towards gene editing. So we've had genetic modification as part of a new breeding technology. Gene editing is now providing even more precise opportunities to improve and enhance the resilience, the climate adaptability of many crops and animals using some very precise new genetic tools. 3D printing. We have a number of members who are really active in 3D printing. You can imagine the scenario on farm with the right equipment. You can print out new replacement parts for pieces of machinery, for example. This is all starting to happen. Earth observation is now actually starting to gain a little bit more traction. I have spent many hours in farm offices with satellite images of farms, and the farmers really have had a pretty picture, but have not really known how to make best value of those kind of imagery and the kind of data that is emerging from that. And it's very heartening to hear the ambition for big data utilization and to gain those actionable insights. John Deere has absolutely been leading the global charge in how to gain those actionable insights on the ground from all sorts of data sets. And I'm very excited to hear more about that in our next speaker. We've been doing a little bit of work around the blockchain and distributed ledger technologies and what the potential for that could be for the financial and transactional nature of agri-tech and the business models that could underpin that. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's taking a while to gain any traction in terms of widespread commercial application, but there are examples. There's been there's been a test bed with the company Unilever, who's been working with tea growers in Malawi to really establish a traceability and agronomic best practice suite of activities, which are all contained in the blockchain to help provide some insight and traceability around the supply chain. We could, and I'm sure we will, spend the rest of the day talking about the role of big data. What I would like to highlight is an institution in the UK that I think has some parallels with what we've been hearing this morning with the ambition being led by Channam University, that the government has set up a centre, a national capability for agri-tech in using big data and AI to be able to enable companies and researchers, and importantly the government, to really make better sense of their data, acting almost as an independent data warehouse. And one very significant project this institution has had, it's called Agrimetrics, has been to work with our National Department for Agriculture to help them to curate the very large data sets that the government holds around things like weather, for example, soils capability, and to help curate that data into such a way that companies, researchers, anybody can make better use of it. At the moment, the data is messy, it's held over a number of sources, there are no real standards and regulations around how that data is used. So there's a big push to be able to, as we were hearing this morning, try and curate that to make it more usable. I don't want to talk in too much detail about virtual reality and augmented reality, but it's something that we're quite excited about. We're seeing this now taking place on farm, particularly around machinery management and animal management. And of course, the AI and the robotics are working together and alongside the Internet of Things to really be inspired by technologies from smart cities, for example. So we now have the smart and connected farm. And again, Professor Lee, your vision of the Innovation Valley is very exciting. Your new campus is going to really be a test bed for these kinds of technologies to be able to give confidence to farmers and to de-risk their adoption of these kinds of technologies. We are now already seeing the Internet of Things being deployed on farms, really increasing efficiency and generating a lot more efficiencies for farmers in terms of their time, to be able to have a dashboard on their phone or tablet, to be able to monitor lots of parameters on farm, from animals to infrastructure to asset tracking and crop performance. And there's a big prize afoot. We've heard about the importance of adapting to a changing climate, but there is a lot of money associated with the growth of these different sectors. And you can see in these slides some examples of some of the things I've just talked about. And apologies, all these data are not entirely consistent because the reports that I've collated sometimes take them to 24, 25, or 26. But you can see these are very large numbers indeed. And the compound annual growth rate of some of these subsectors for agritech is really very, very impressive indeed. And it's something that it's very, again, exciting to think about how we can collaborate together to capture some of that value. Now, we spend a lot of time working with early stage ventures, and one of the things we've been very keen to learn about while we've been here in South Korea is about the investment appetite. To build an innovation ecosystem, you need a number of ingredients. Of course, you need excellent research and development capabilities. You need large and small companies. You need a pool of talented individuals and labor who can operate at all levels of the value chain, from on the ground, on farm, to senior level management and PhD in research. You need that ecosystem. You also need a very enabling regulatory environment. And we would like to talk to you more about that. The UK has tried very hard to create that enabling regulatory environment, and we'd be keen to understand more about that landscape here in South Korea. You also need the infrastructure, and again, hearing the plans and the significant investment underway to create that kind of infrastructure with the campus, with the kinds of not just the capital infrastructure, but also the people and the opportunities to help farmers in particular gain confidence in these technologies and how they can really gain traction on their farm to really do what the technology was invented to achieve. And again, as part of this enabling ecosystem, I've been very pleased to see that we have some reference this afternoon to patent law. You need those professionals who understand the legal landscape, the land agents, those who are involved in training those professionals who perhaps are not on farm themselves, but need to have that agri-literacy, as we call it, to ensure that technology, again, has a seamless transition from the idea onto the farm. And that investment landscape from both public and private is a really key enabler. Some very impressive numbers we've heard about this morning about the level of investment that's going into agritech. But as you can see, the top 20 markets by investment going into companies, and the orange numbers are the numbers of companies, and the green bars show the actual figures. This is in US dollars, I should say. And we, in the UK, we hover around between 3, 4, and 5, depending on the year in the ranking. And we like to think that in the UK, we punch very much above our weight when it comes to leveraging the R&D into commercial investment. And I won't read these numbers out to you. You're very capable of reading them yourselves. But this is a very important sector for us as well. And again, we've been hearing the dependence on imports since the pandemic, since the instability, the geopolitical instability that we're seeing across the world. This is not a sector that's going to go away, and we need all the technologies we can to help advance them. And another lens that we've been looking at agriculture through in the UK is in this direction to sustainability. We have a new additional agenda alongside food production in the UK, which is a journey to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And this is quite challenging. This is not a sector that has traditionally lent itself very well to being able to achieve a net zero agenda. So our National Farmers Union, for example, has written a policy document to highlight a roadmap as to how the industry can start to reduce the emissions, and obviously innovations like lighting around vertical farming, which you'll be hearing about a little later, are all significant contributors to that journey. And we have a national food strategy document that was published a couple of years ago to again try and map out the role of agriculture in the wider food agenda in the UK. So I have a very quick video here, which I will just talk over. I'm sure you've seen many videos like this. Professor Lee showed us something very similar from some of the research that's been emerging from his group at the university. But the idea to use autonomous vehicles that don't mind the conditions, they can be dirty, dangerous, wet, boring, and robots are very good at doing this. I should point out this film has been speeded up. That harvester does not harvest wheat at the speed, it's at double speed. This was a demonstrator model at Harper Adams University in the UK, which aimed to grow a hectare of wheat without any human intervention at all. So from ploughing to harvest, there was not a single human set foot on that hectare of wheat while they were doing the harvest. That program is now expanded to be a hands-free farm. So the robotics and the harvesting is really gaining enormous traction. It's not quite yet fast enough for harvesting, but certainly around crop management, it's proving very exciting. And just a couple of case studies here. The top left-hand picture shows one of our members' tree map that is looking to map all the trees around in the blockchain. And they look particularly, I can't move this back. Can I move this back? Yes. They look particularly at being able to tokenize trees, which is very important in orchards. We're looking there at citrus, but you can imagine for fruit trees, for olive groves, being able to identify the performance and behavior of the trees is really important. Plant imaging technologies, we saw some in the exhibition yesterday, but this particular company, Photenics, in our network is looking to build digital twins. And digital twins are really exciting, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a later slide. And I also I mentioned virtual and augmented reality earlier on in a slide. This is an AI headset which stores the medical records of cows. You can imagine in a field of a barn of cows, it's not very easy to have a tablet. Also, pen and paper is even worse. So you can put on a headset that has in your line of vision the medical records and the health status of every individual cow. So you can be clean. You don't have to worry about keeping paper notes or breaking your tablet. You can use those on in the barn. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about controlled environment production because you'll be hearing about those from my colleagues in their talks later on. But one thing I did just want to flag up was, as well as food production, there's a huge opportunity here to harness nature, not just as a food producer, but also as a purveyor of medicines. And this compound you may be familiar with, salicylic acid, is extracted from willow, from the bark of willow, and was the first natural plant product to be chemically synthesized at commercial scale by Bayer. We know it as aspirin. I think it's also an ingredient of Advil. Do you have Advil? So aspirin, really important. And harnessing nature's medicine cabinet is something that I think is really important for vertical farming. These chemicals are mainly used as defense chemicals in plants. But just to run the animation, these plants are really making some very exciting chemicals, and importantly, some very high-value chemicals. And if you look at the complexity of these chemical structures, they are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to make synthetically. The only way you can make these is in plants. Now, some of these plants you can grow at scale. The Madagascan periwinkle, for example, at the bottom, the pink flower, you can grow that at scale outside. But can you imagine the potential to grow that in controlled environment conditions under good manufacturing practice and a high care environment? To be able to use those materials is really, really a game changer. Now, some of these plants are actually very big. They might be trees, for example, so they're not very practical to grow at scale. But you can harness new technology, and I want to particularly talk about transient leaf expression, which is a new technology that's been pioneered in the UK and being used to generate COVID vaccines in the US. This is Nicotiana. It's a model plant that is very, very clever. You can give it a protein and it will make it in its leaves for a very short amount of time, a few days. So you can grow those in vertical farming conditions under highly controlled conditions, and you can then harvest those leaves very easily, and then you can go on to process them as your drug. There is an issue at the moment with ensuring that there is a bioequivalence, that when that these compounds perform the same when you use them as a drug as to the way their synthetic counterparts might, if indeed you can make a synthetic counterpart. But I think within 5 years, we will be starting to see these kinds of technologies routinely adapted. I just want to run very quickly through some kind of 5 key tenets that we've come up with for agriculture and agri-tech, and they sort of drive our thinking. And one is a systems approach to agriculture. The World Health Organization has come up with this idea of One Health, which is a collaboration between patients, between doctors and the health system. And we are advocating for a one agriculture approach where crops, animals, soils, the environment, people are all being viewed as a holistic system. The reductionist approach has served us well. We now need to bring together a more integrated approach. We can also now understand the interdependencies between the micro and the macro from the molecular level within organisms and small, we were talking yesterday about the microbiome, the community of microbes around roots in animal guts, right up to the whole catchment of significant holdings and farms, understanding how from the very tiny to the very big there is an interdependency. I mentioned a little bit about time. We can now use agri-tech to save time and to deliver interventions just in time. So that opportunity to save time, to even, dare I say it, change time, now is at our fingertips with the use of these technologies. I mentioned digital twins earlier on. These, I think, are going to become an increasingly important tool to help de-risk and scenario plan and model future interventions. We hear this often stated figure that a farmer has 50 chances in their lives to get it right if they're growing an annual crop. And being able to de-risk any decisions by creating a digital twin is something that we hope will inspire confidence in farmers to be able to take on, at least change their mindset for new technology. And finally, I think we need to acknowledge we're beyond the comfort zone. We have climate change, as we've heard this morning. We've been through a global pandemic, more perhaps to come. We have geopolitical instability. So we now have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and we have technologies to help mitigate against that. So just a few things about us. I won't read this out. This is Agti-TechE. We are an independent organization. We're not funded by government, importantly, but we have created this innovation ecosystem to help bring together this multidisciplinary approach to increase productivity and efficiency and sustainability. And I wanted to just highlight something that has come to my mind since we've been here at this conference and exhibition, is the importance of farmers in these conversations. I think I already know the answer to this, but if anyone here is a farmer, could you raise your hand? 1. So these are really important conversations to have with farmers. So as well as the technology push, we need the market pull. And one thing we did was to take a group of our technologists out onto the farm. We took them to the UK's largest salad growers, and we asked them to manually harvest lettuces, which is how lettuces are harvested in the UK, right? And it's jolly difficult. It's very hard work. And some of these technologists were saying, well, there has to be an easier way to do this. There has to be a technological solution. And getting the technologists out onto the farm inspired their thinking as to how they could come up with some technological solutions to what is still a very labor-intensive process. So it's that kind of virtuous circle between the innovators and the end users that we think has been really important. And we were encouraged to hear yesterday that some of those activities are already underway. We also, as an organization, take international missions. This is us at Bayer's headquarters in St. Louis. And again, we're very privileged to be here today on a little mini agri-tech trade mission. We have a conference coming up in a couple of 2 months, 3 months. And this is again going to be looking at this idea of adapting beyond the comfort zone. We have the National Farmers Union Deputy President speaking, as well as the Chief Scientist of our Department for Agriculture. And we think that's really important to have the farmers and the scientists together talking about need and opportunity. We build all that around a week of activities that we call Agri-Tech Week. I won't go through this in detail, but the idea is that people immerse themselves in this whole idea of what agri-tech can do for and with farmers. And I say again, the importance of keeping the farmers engaged in these conversations can't be overestimated. So really, in summary, these are the kinds of partners we have in our network, from agribusiness to business support, farmers, international partners, the research community, and technology developers. And we have a series of tiers for those to become members who would like to join us. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank our hosts, and we look forward to this being a continuation in what is a very fruitful collaboration, and we very much look forward to ongoing conversations with you. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.